Now here we have Johnny's garden, and you've heard me talk about it before, and I've shown it to you on a few times, pictures and in a video. And Johnny's garden has a lot of herbs that we like to use in the kitchen, but also a lot of other kinds of plants here. He's got some plants that I've planted, and so as I'm looking right in front of me, there's this basil. But he's got some other plants here too. This is a pumpkin, which is growing. We did not plant this pumpkin. A plant that's growing in a place where you didn't plant it, but it's not a weed, is called a volunteer. And so in Johnny's garden, we have 2 pumpkin plants as volunteers and 2 tomatoes. We've got a tomato plant right in front of us and one right on over here. We got these plants because we've fertilized Johnny's garden with worm compost. And inside the worm compost is seeds, and those seeds are germinating. So what we're gonna do right now, we have to do a little bit of tending in this garden, and I'm just gonna tuck right on in. I'm noticing that around these basil plants, there's a lot of crabgrass, and I got to take that on out there. That crabgrass is going to establish a nice thick root system and compete with Johnny's basil for nutrients and for water, and that's not good. We want to grow basil in here. We don't want to grow crabgrass. And so just like before, I've got my bucket. I've got a little broken plastic tin just in case we came across some sort of critter. If it was definitely a pest, we pop it right on in there. But if it's one that we needed to identify, we weren't sure if it was a pest or not, we could also put it on in there just to be sure. We want to encourage a nice, healthy relationship with insects in our sustainable garden. And so you can see, as we're working through, I have a grid just like I did in some of my other weeding videos that I'm working on. I'm just working all around the base of this first basil plant just to make sure that we don't have any weeds. And this one, I haven't been out here to weed in about a week and a half, and you can tell. In the sustainable garden, you are working hard to provide the soil everything that it needs in order to be a wonderful environment for the growing of plants, right? So what that means is it's also a wonderful environment for the growing of weeds, because a weed is really just a plant that's growing where you don't want it and you don't have any use for it. A volunteer is a plant that's growing in a place where you don't want it, but you can use it. So I'm working my grid. I've almost got this first basil plant finished. I'm making sure to look behind, right? We've got a whole knot of crabgrass just behind. There we go. Making sure to get it all, right? The earlier that you weed and the more often that you weed, the easier the weeding's going to be, because you think about the root systems of these plants. As they grow, they send out roots, sometimes quite deep, quite thick. And so when the weeds are first coming up, if you're weeding right away, they're easier. They'll just slide right up out of the ground, easy peasy. If you wait a long time though, that's when you can get into a little bit of trouble. The roots will have established themselves, sometimes, like I said, quite deep into the growing media. And as you're pulling them out, those roots might be intertwined and tangled with the roots of the plant that you want to grow. And so pulling them out might damage the root system of your plant, which means you'll set your plant back a little bit. That's no good. So you want to weed as often as you can. One of the ways to reduce the amount that you have to weed is to use mulch. That's one of the 4 pillars of our sustainable garden, right? Mulch. It's going to trap water in the soil, but it's also going to reduce the success of weeds because they're not going to have an easy time getting down into the soil. They'll have to send their initial taproot down through an inch or 2 or 3 or 4 of mulch. And so a lot of sustainable gardeners will use mulch, either a plastic mulch that rolls on over the top of your plants, or they'll use a bark mulch. They could use seaweed. You could even use compost as a mulch. I have not mulched these guys at all. Not at all. And you can see that because I haven't, it's really just a wonderful area here with nice, rich, loamy soil that this crabgrass wants to colonize. And so as we're taking another look at it, you'll notice that I've started in my grid. I've worked all around and in and behind the plants, making sure that I took out all of the grass that I found or any other kinds of plants. But you'll also notice there's this guy that I'm just leaving. This right here is a cucumber plant, and I did not plant it here, but I think I'm just going to let it grow, just like I'm going to let these pumpkins grow, just like I'm going to let these tomatoes grow. I'm going to let it grow because why not? Johnny likes to come on out and sit next to his garden, and we'll let him enjoy that. So that is my lesson today about weeding basil, and I will talk with you again very soon.